smoke curled through the shattered ceiling of HFY-9's command center, dancing lazily above flickering consoles and half-dead displays. Emergency lights painted everything in harsh crimson, casting long shadows across alien faces drawn with exhaustion and fear. Outside, the vacuum of space pressed in like a closing fist. Beyond the orbital shield, the Kroth Dominion siege fleet floated like a hungry storm. Black, angular ships with crimson-lit underbellies moved with terrible patience, tightening their noose. General Torvak stood tall, despite the creaking ache in his joints. His green-scaled face was cracked and dry, his posture held by sheer force of will. 36 hours without sleep. 3 days of continuous bombardment. He watched the tactical display sputter and stutter, lines of defense blinking out like dying stars. He clenched his claws behind his back. "Status report," he rasped. Lieutenant Jorah's thin, spindly limbs twitched as she analyzed the failing systems, her compound eyes darting across numbers that refused to stay stable. Her mandibles clicked once, betraying stress. Shield matrix integrity down to 17%. Power relays overloaded. Atmospheric stabilizers offline in 4 outer domes. Weapon systems 80% disabled. Torvak didn't blink. And communications? Still jammed, General. All channels are scrambled. The Kroth are using wave null fields. We've tried encryption cycling. Nothing gets out. Silence followed. Heavy. Final dot then, a voice, quiet but clear, broke through the gloom. "I might be able to send something," said Corporal Mira Tanaka. She stood near the auxiliary bulkhead, a toolkit strapped to one thigh and a carbine on the other. Her face was streaked with soot, a fresh gash bleeding slowly across her temple. Still, she looked more steady than any of them. Torvak's slitted eyes turned toward her. "Explain." Myra pointed toward the collapsed outer ring. "There's a backup transmitter on Tower C. It's analog old Earth tech, not built for the Council's net. But it's simple, dirty. Might punch through whatever jamming field they're using." Jorah tilted her head in disbelief. "That structure is outside the shield, Corporal. The Kroth already control the ridge line. You'd have to cross open ground." Myra nodded. "I know. That's suicide." "Maybe." Myra wiped the blood from her eyebrow and strapped her helmet back on. "But maybe it's worth it." Torvak studied her a long moment. So small, so soft by his standards. Flesh instead of armor. No scales, no carapace. Just bone, blood, and that burning stare. He gestured slowly toward the door. "You have 5 minutes." She gave a small nod and walked out without hesitation. Inside the command center, the silence returned, but this time it trembled under the weight of something unspoken. Jorah finally broke it. "She won't make it." Torvak didn't answer. Instead, he stepped forward and looked out through the observation slit. The Kroth ships were moving again, rearranging, preparing for the kill. He murmured, mostly to himself, "We shouldn't be depending on humans, not for this." But still, he watched the dark horizon, waiting for a spark. The wind outside HFY-9 was dry and bitter, cutting through the gaps in Myra's armored suit as she crouched behind a collapsed Cum's dish on the outer causeway. Dust, kicked up from each distant impact, coated her visor. Above her, the stars looked cold and distant, like they were already mourning what was about to happen. Her boots crunched against broken glass and fragments of alloy as she pushed forward. The station's outer ring had been bombed 3 times in the last day. Whole towers lay in jagged ruin. Mira moved fast and low, sticking close to the twisted skeletons of metal beams. The Kroth patrols weren't far. She'd already spotted 2 hulking brutes in dark crimson armor, dragging their plasma rifles like they were too bored to care. The analog transmitter wasn't far, maybe 300 meters. But to get there, She'd have to cross a section of open ground with no cover scorched flat by the last orbital strike. She checked the satchel on her side again. Tools old world. Cables. A tiny signal modulator she'd wired together in her bunk. Everything she needed if the thing still had power. If. A sudden burst of static crackled through her combs. Mira ducked behind a collapsed air vent. "Tanaka, this is Lieutenant Jora," came the faint voice. "Are you alive?" "Still kicking," Myra whispered. "Halfway there. Saw 2 patrols. No sign they spotted me." "Be careful. One of our recon drones just went dark near your position. They're tightening their sweep." Mira smiled faintly. "Tell Torvak to keep a drink cold for me." She killed the channel. Then she ran. Her boots hit the blackened concrete in rhythmic thuds. Every breath inside her helmet came sharp and fast. Somewhere behind her, a Kroth soldier bellowed. Plasma bolts lit the sky in blue flashes. She didn't stop. The base of Tower C loomed ahead, tilted at a brutal angle, most of its midsection shattered. The metal stairs creaked dangerously as she climbed. Halfway up, the tower swayed with the wind. The control room was a box of rust and grime. Old, Earth-tech metal switches, rotary dials, a thick wire antenna snaking out into the storm-racked sky. Myra dropped to her knees beside the console and pulled off a panel, hands moving fast. She rewired the backup generator, twisted the coupler into place, and shoved the signal booster into its socket. Then she spoke into the mic. "This is Corporal Mira Tanaka of Atripsis 9. Council post is under siege. We have no time. Coordinates embedded in signal packet. We need firepower. Heavy, human if possible." She hit send and prayed. A second passed. Then another. The ancient screen blinked. Transmission sent. A breath left her lungs. Then she heard it heavy boots thudding against the metal stairs below. They'd found her. Mira pulled her carbine off her back, dropped to one knee by the console, and took aim at the door. "If nobody heard it," she whispered, "then I guess I die loud." The first Kroth soldier charged in. Myra fired. The recoil slammed into her shoulder as the first shot dropped the Kroth warrior mid-charge. His body hit the wall with a dull, wet crunch. Mira didn't wait. She shifted position, chambered the next round, and aimed again. Another came through. This one smarter, he ducked low, returned fire. A bolt of plasma screamed past her cheek and tore through the console behind her, sending sparks and a high-pitched whine into the air. "Not the transmitter," she hissed, pivoting around a support. Beam. The room lit up in chaotic bursts of blue and orange as Myra traded fire with the incoming patrol. She dropped a second Kroth with a precise shot to the throat joint of his armor. Her breath was fast and shallow now, helmet alarms blinking, red oxygen mix compromised, body temp rising. A grenade rolled through the door. Shit. Myra kicked. It back. It detonated mid-air, the blast shaking the tower and sending a rain of rust and metal dust over her. One of the roof beams cracked. Part of the upper wall collapsed behind her with a screech of groaning steel. She didn't feel the cut on her leg until it was bleeding into her boot. The room was silent again. Smoke clung to the walls. Myra's rifle was almost dry, 2 mags left. She slumped against the console, panting, every bone in her body screaming. But then she saw it, a flicker. The transmitter was still on, still blinking. Her message had gone out. She didn't know if anyone had heard it. She didn't know if Earth even still monitored analog bursts from backwater systems like this. But the signal was live. From her belt, she pulled a flare-rolled military issue, waterproof, impact ready. Mira limped to the edge of the tower, where a steel girder had been blown clean open, and lit the flare. A bright orange spear cut through the blackness. Below, The Kroth soldiers swarmed like ants over broken ground. But they hesitated when they saw her. One human, standing bloody, half-burned, holding fire. She raised the flare high and screamed. I sent the message. A plasma bolt tore into her shoulder. She dropped to one knee, but still held the flare. Back in the command center, Jorah froze at her station. Her antennae twitched wildly. The signal board lit up. General, she called, eyes wide. Torvak was already at her side. Analog burst source confirmed. Tower C signal complete. Can you trace it? He asked. Already bouncing through 6 council beacons. Someone's going to see it. Outside, the Kroth ships repositioned. Several of them began powering weapons. Torvak closed his eyes. The last defense dome was failing. Every life on the outpost, nearly 10,000 council personnel, depended on a transmission sent by a single human girl with blood in her mouth and a flare in her hand. He looked toward the black sky and whispered, Please, someone answer. The outpost began to die. It started with a tremor low, deep, and growing. Walls moaned under pressure as the final layers of the shield dome flickered and buckled. Above HFY 9, the once transparent sky shield now pulsed an angry red, full of hairline cracks like a glass bowl about to shatter. Inside the command center, a siren began to scream. Then another. Then all of them. Lieutenant Jorah's fingers darted across her console, desperate for anything that resembled good news. Main defense grid is offline. Turret batteries are down. Power rerouting failed. All we've got left are personal arms and perimeter mines. General Torvak didn't flinch. He stood in the center of the chaos, like a cracked statue too stubborn to fall. The Kroth ships had finally begun their final descent. Massive carriers and escort destroyers moved into orbital range, weapons arrays glowing like molten eyes. He spoke without turning. Ground forces? Dropping in NAS pods, sir, Jorah said, her voice trembling now. We're estimating 4,000 troops incoming. Impact in less than 10 minutes. Then we meet them on the ground. Torvak tapped a button on the console, and his voice roared through the station-wide PA system. This is General Torvak. To all surviving units, prepare for full surface breach. I will not order surrender. Fight with what you have. Fight for as long as you can. Across HFY 9, alien soldiers of every kind looked up from their stations and trenches. Reptilian, insectoid, avian, mammalian. Beaten, bloodied, but not broken. And one human lay bleeding in the ruins of Tower C, her flare long dead, her eyes watching the stars in silence. Down in the bunker medical bay, Mira's body twitched as she was pulled from a crash sled and dragged onto a table. Medics scrambled to stabilize her. Shock. Plasma burned through the shoulder. Fractured ribs. She's lucky she's even wait, her eyes. Myra gasped, coughing up blood. Did it go through? She asked, barely audible. A nurse bent down beside her. Yes, the signal reached the grid. Someone will hear it. You did everything you could. Myra smiled faintly. It's not enough. They'll be here any minute. She tried to sit up. Failed. I need to be on the line. You need rest, I said. She growled, blood in her teeth. Get me my armor. On the horizon, the Kroth drop pods began their descent. Massive cylinders with blazing retro engines roared through the upper atmosphere. Like fiery knives falling from the sky, the soldiers in the trenches of HFY 9 saw them. Hundreds of pods streaking across the clouds, each carrying 10 Kroth warriors. Each a metal coffin with only one direction down. Jorah whispered into her combs, impact in 2 minutes. Torvak exhaled slowly and removed his ceremonial shoulder plates. They were too heavy for what was coming next. Myra stood behind him now, swaying slightly, one arm in a sling, the other gripping her carbine. Her armor was cracked and charred, but she wore it anyway. Her face was pale but steady. "Still here, Corporal?" Torvak asked, his voice surprisingly soft. "Humans don't leave early." Mira muttered dot. They stood side by side as the first pods slammed into the surface like thunderclaps. The ground shook. Trenches trembled. The sky split open, and the last stand began. The world cracked open as the first Kroth drop pods slammed into the soil of Atraxis 9. Each impact sent up plumes of fire and dust, shaking the ground like a drum of war. Within moments, the enemy poured out tall, armored beasts with jagged weapons and glowing optics, roaring battle cries that echoed across the broken terrain. From the trenches and ruined towers, the defenders of Atraxis 9 answered with gunfire, plasma bolts, and sheer desperation. The air turned to smoke and heat. Explosions painted the sky orange, and still more pods fell. General Torvak fired from the forward command trench, his pulse rifle kicking against his scaled shoulder. Beside him, Mira Tanaka crouched low, eyes sharp despite the blood drying in the corners. Every time she squeezed her trigger, a Kroth went down. 2 shots. 3. Duck. Reload. Breathe. They were outnumbered nearly 10 to 1. Lieutenant Jorah's voice crackled through their helmets. "They've breached Sector 5. Shields are gone. No reinforcements incoming. We're surrounded." Mira clenched her jaw. "Not yet, we're not." Torvak gave her a side glance. "You still believe help is coming?" She didn't look back, just muttered, "Yeah." Then she looked up. Far above, beyond the dark Kroth warships blotting out the stars, the sky twitched. At first, it looked like a mirage. A flicker. In the void, then another. Dozens, the stars bent. Reality folded, and light white-hot and searing burst through the cracks in the heavens. Dozens of massive, angular ships ripped their way out of spacetime, emerging with impossible speed and precision. No elegant curves, no delicate antennae. These weren't Council vessels. These were human, and they were furious. Across every channel, a voice thundered. "This is Admiral Cyril Locke of Earth's 7th Fleet. To all Kroth, Dominion vessels stand down or be erased. You have 20 seconds to comply." Silence fell on the battlefield. Even the Kroth hesitated. Their warships stopped advancing. Their ground troops paused. Torvak blinked, stunned. "Impossible. There's no hyperspace route into this system. They can't be here." Myra's lip curled into a tired smile. "Told you, we punch our own doors." In orbit, the 7th Fleet took formation like a school of Iron Shark's destroyers, cruisers, missile platforms, and a single terrifying flagship shaped like a floating fortress. On the ground, the skies ignited as atmospheric burn-in trails screamed across the Sky-Earth's dropships, descending like spears hurled by the gods. Admiral Locke's voice returned. "Time's up. All units engage." Space erupted. Human. Railguns spat kinetic death. Missiles launched in coordinated storms, overwhelming the Kroth capital ships with relentless precision. Earth's fighters moved like razor blades, too fast, too aggressive, slicing through enemy squadrons with brutal efficiency. On the ground, Earth's shock troopers hit the field in mech armor, hurling themselves into the Kroth lines with flamethrowers, scatter cannons, and rage. The Kroth, so used to domination, panicked. Torvak staggered to his feet, staring as Kroth soldiers began retreating for the first time in the entire siege. Mira stood beside him, bleeding, shaking, smiling. "Reinforcements," she said. "Told you, Earth never leaves its own behind." And then the sky burned with fury, and the counterattack began. The battlefield transformed in seconds. Where Atraxis 9 had been a graveyard in waiting, it was now a Forge 1 where Earth's Wrath was being hammered into reality. Human warships in orbit moved like machines built for vengeance, each designed with cold, brutal logic. No unnecessary curves. No ceremonial flair. Only weapons, armor, engines, fired out in the trenches. The defenders of the Council stopped shooting for. Just a moment, watching, disbelieving. Earth's dropships didn't land gently. They slammed into the ground behind Kroth lines, hatches bursting open mid-descent. Troopers emerged like tidal waves, encased in alloy armor and carrying heavy weaponry. Council troops could barely comprehend. Mira could barely hear over the roar of twin pulse jets. A massive human walker, three-legged and bristling with rotary cannons, charged through the Kroth flank like a predator. Its guns lit up, mowing down enemy squads, screaming, fire, smoke, steel. Then came the Ghost Walls unit. Insignias marked them. A howling wolf's skull under a shattered moon. Earth's most feared rapid strike force. They moved without wasted motion, covered in armor so black it drank the light. They didn't shout. They didn't chant. They just killed, clean, fast, silent. Admiral Locke's voice echoed across comms again. Calm and cold. Sector 6 neutralized. Forward trench lines reinforced. Begin sweep protocol. No prisoners. General Torvak stared at the chaos, lips parting in awe. Your forces. They're not soldiers. Myra nodded slowly. Yeah, they're wolves. One ghost. Wolf paused beside her trench, visor gleaming. With no words, he offered her a replacement rifle, bigger, heavier, human-made, then vanished back into the smoke. Council command, came Jorah's stunned voice across the comms. We have regained the North Ridge. Earth units are advancing. Kroth formations collapsing. In orbit, one of the enemy capital ships tried to break away. Too late. 3 Earth cruisers locked on. A swarm of hypersonic slugs slammed into the Kroth ship's flank, rupturing its reactors. The explosion lit up the dark sky like a new sun. Debris scattered across space like shrapnel. Admiral Locke opened a direct line to the entire battlefield. To the Kroth Dominion. This outpost called for help. Earth answered. If any of your vessels remain after this, carry this message home. We do not abandon our own. And if you force us to fight, she paused, just long enough to let the silence bite, we end it. Council officers across the trenches stared at the sky with new eyes. Not just fear. Respect. General. Torvak looked to Myra. How many more fleets like this does your world have? She blinked, blood still drying on her cheek. Don't know, she said. But the wolves? They're just our fastest. And then the Kroth broke. Across the valley, enemy soldiers began dropping their weapons and fleeing. Earth's forces advanced like a black tide, their ships sealing the sky above. And humanity's presence carved itself into history with every step. Atraxis 9 would not fall. Not today. Because Earth had arrived. The smoke over Atraxis 9 thinned slowly, like the battlefield itself was exhaling after holding its breath for too long. Kroth bodies and broken. Armor littered the charred plains. Council medics moved through the wreckage, their white uniforms smeared with ash and blood. Drones hummed overhead, scanning for life signs, friend or foe. But the fighting had stopped. The Kroth were gone, either dead, captured, or fleeing into deep space. And the sky, once filled with siege. Ships and dread now belonged entirely to Earth's fleet. Inside the fractured command center, General Torvak stood before a wide viewport that no longer showed flame, but stars. His posture still rigid, but something had changed in his eyes. Not just relief. Something deeper. RECALIBRATION. Behind him, Lieutenant Jorah clacked softly at her console, antennae twitching. Her voice was hushed when she spoke. All enemy vessels accounted for. Remaining Kroth forces are in full retreat. Earth units are sweeping the far ridges. No resistance reported. Casualties? Council forces, 72% loss. Earth troops? Minor injuries. Minimal deaths. Torvak grunted. Minimal deaths. From a full frontal counter-assault against a superior force. Jorah nodded. They're not like us, she whispered. They don't fight like us. They don't think like us. Mira Tanaka stood a few meters away, stripped of her broken armor now, her left arm bandaged tightly. The human medics had tried to keep her in the infirmary, but she refused to be absent from the debrief. She leaned against the wall, sipping. From a battered steel flask, Admiral Sarah Locke entered the room with the weight of command wrapped around her shoulders like a cloak. She was younger than expected, but her presence filled the space. General Torvak, she said crisply. Atraxis 9 is secure. Earth will maintain a defensive net until the Council dispatches a replacement garrison. He turned to her slowly. Admiral, how did you get here? Locke tilted her head. We jumped in through dark space. But that route is uncharted, dangerous, even suicidal. We charted it ourselves. You risked your entire fleet on a blind entrance? Locke gave a thin smile. We didn't come to debate logistics, General. We came because one of ours lit a flare. She nodded toward Myra. Torvak looked at the corporal, dirty, bruised, smiling despite the pain. Just a ground soldier. A grunt, but she'd held the line. And sent the call. Why? He asked. Why did Earth come? The Council ignored us. No one else responded, but you. Your fleet arrived like vengeance itself. Locke stepped forward, gaze steady. Because Earth remembers what it means to be alone, she said. We were ignored, mocked, left behind when your council met without us. But we watched, we listened. And when the call came, we moved. Not because of orders, but because we have a rule, General. She leaned in slightly. Nobody gets left behind. Silence fell over the command room. A silence filled not with shock, but understanding. For the first time, Torvak saw humanity not as a primitive, angry species, but as loyal, terrifying, unyielding dot, and something even rarer in the galaxy, trustworthy dot. He gave a slow, deep nod. Then perhaps, Admiral, we were wrong about you. Locke didn't reply. She just turned and walked out already. Preparing the next order, the next deployment. Mira stayed a moment longer. Her voice was low, just for Torvak. You saw one fleet, she said. But Earth's got dozens, hundreds, waiting, training, watching. He blinked. For what? Her eyes turned to the stars. For whoever thinks this was the last time. Earth shows up. And then she limped after her commander, leaving silence in her wake. In the days that followed, Atraxis 9 transformed from a graveyard into a fortress. Human engineers, clad in armored exosuits, rebuilt what the Kroth had torn down. They didn't wait for council approval. They just acted. Tower reinforcements, anti-orbital gun batteries, reinforced bunkers, emergency tunnels. Everything was rebuilt in weeks, not months. Their technology wasn't elegant, but it worked. Council observers, those who had hidden in distant systems, until the fighting ended now, arrived in cautious trickles. They expected smoldering wreckage. Instead, they found a fortified outpost running on, Earth standard protocols, and defended by human soldiers with eyes that had seen too much. Inside the new war chamber, a final meeting convened. General Torvak sat across from Admiral Sarah Locke, both flanked by representatives from the surviving council worlds. Jorah stood behind her general, while Mira, now promoted to staff sergeant, stood silently beside Locke, one hand still resting on her sidearm. A Cathari noble, One of the higher-ranking council ministers spoke first. This incident was not what we expected. Humanity's response was unprecedented. Locke's eyes didn't flinch. You're welcome. The minister cleared his throat. There are concerns about the scale of your mobilization, your methods, the speed at which your fleet moved. It suggests preparation. Locke leaned forward slightly. We were prepared. Your council told us to expect the best, but prepare for the worst. So we did. But to punch through dark space? That violates core navigational ethics, Mira interrupted, her voice sharp and unapologetic. In the Kroth violating war treaties, slaughtering civilians and jamming distress calls doesn't. Silence. Locke stood. We don't need your gratitude. We didn't show up to earn a seat. We showed up because one of ours was there. That's the difference. She paused, then continued, her voice calm but cutting. You sit here now, frightened not of the Kroth, but of what you saw us do. And that's fine. Fear can be useful. But make sure you fear the right thing. The room stiffened. Don't fear our weapons, she said. Fear what it means when Earth decides someone is worth saving. Torvak exhaled slowly and stood beside her. He looked at the council, his voice heavy with something that felt like shame and realization. We asked for help, he said. Only one world answered. We were wrong about humans. We were wrong to see them as tools for the ground war. They are not our pawns. He looked at Mira, who bore the scars of battle, yet stood taller than all of them. They are our equals. Know our protectors when no one else will rise. A month later, a bronze plaque was mounted on the rebuilt tower at a TRA. X is -9 in memory of those who held the line. In honor of those who answered. We called for help. Earth came far from Atrixis 9. On a distant world in Kroth space, a fleet commander stood in the shadows of a ruined outpost. Charred armor, crushed turrets. Walls punched through with impossible force. He stared at a jagged slice of metal buried in the dirt. Black steel, marked with a white insignia. A howling wolf skull under a broken moon. The commander hissed and turned away. Mark this sector forbidden. Earth has come, he growled, and the wolves are real. And across the stars, deep in Earth's command core, a quiet alert pinged another distress call, another flare, another world in need. The ghost wolves began to move.